Hello everyone, welcome to my vlog. So it's Tuesday morning and you guys probably noticed I haven't do any vlog for about a week, so I think it's just right about a time to do a short vlog. So today's vlog I would like to dedicate it entirely and talk about corporate headshots. And I noticed there's a lot of questions and a lot of posts on social media where people asking like how they're supposed to deal with those kind of shoots, how they're supposed to deal with those companies. So I think that's going to be actually a good vlog to talk about it a little bit, especially I'm going through some very interesting story with one of the big companies where I'm supposed to do corporate headshots. So I think it's going to be a great topic to talk about. So there's few factors which we have to actually look into whenever we're going to be doing corporate headshots for a big company. Usually there's two different types of companies. One of them is, I would say, dream come true to work with them because they are organized. They can plan everything really well, and basically I just have to go in, do the shoot, and everyone is happy at the end of the day and there's no issues. On the flip side, there are companies which are so unorganized and they kind of dysfunctional. They have people who are very responsible, and dealing with them is just a pure nightmare. And I actually have those companies which I had to work with those companies in the past. So that's always, I would say, a lesson, and from those kind of bad situations we learn the most. So sometimes we really have to take a step back, and when we actually notice some red flags coming up, then it's a good time to actually just think about it and take a specific approach how to deal with them. So let's actually get into it. So the first thing what I'm looking at is if this is the new company or this is a returning company. If this is like a returning company which I worked with before and I have good experiences working with them, that's not an issue. Like, I know what I'm getting into, and then I actually can bend some rules and just make sure that at the end of the day these people are happy. So that's easy. If there's a company which is returning and I have issues with, then of course I'm gonna just take completely different approach and deal with them on completely different way. So what about there's a new company? If there's a new company, then we definitely need to be very careful. And I think in early stages we can notice what's going on, what kind of company is this, and how we're supposed to deal with them. So the first thing what I'm looking at, and this is the first, I would say, signal how this whole thing is going to look like, is how the company communicate with us. So let's say if we sending them emails and we get fairly quick response and they want to talk to us, let's say over the phone, they want to just deal with us on the very, I would say, fast pace where the communication is not a problem, then I know they are serious about the shoot. I know they are it's going to be much easier dealing with them, because even if I will get in any issues, then I know that there is a communication going on, and I will be able to solve some of those challenges which is going to be part of the shoot. Like, I'm sure most of you guys noticed that I haven't had a shoot where there are some challenges and issues which you have to actually deal with. So that's the first thing. If let's say company they don't respond to emails, or you leave them a bunch of phone messages and they respond, let's say after 4 days, then like this is the red flag, and then you have to be very careful, because if you get in a situation that you're gonna need some help or some assistance, that's probably not gonna happen. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is what I would like to talk about is if the company understands the process of creating the headshots, because I've noticed that most of the companies, they have no idea. They simply come to you and they're like, okay, we want to headshots for our employees. and they coming up with those, I would say, ridiculous ideas, which we know as a photographers they're not going to work. And I completely understand their point, because they have no idea how this whole thing works. We have to explain to them. But there's two different, I would say, aspects. One of them, do they listen to you and they actually try to understand the process, or they completely ignore it and they want to actually do everything kind of own way? So we have to be very, very careful and see how they respond to that. Because if they, let's say, saying to you like, oh well, we have 100 employees and can you do it in like in a couple hours, and you say no, and they're like, well, so can we do like 2.5 hours? Or so there's some kind of like a I would say arrogance, and you know, they don't really listen to you. They want to do this whole thing I would say own way. So for me, this is automatically like a red flag. And if they're not gonna follow the steps and the suggestions, and I would say the approach which I would like to take to make this project happen, I'll just simply gonna tell them, you know, they will have to look for somebody else to do this project. And so speaking of that, whenever we say no to the company, because this is something important, and I know some of you guys like, oh well, it's money, and I don't want to lose the client. So that's tricky sometimes, because there's certain things and certain situations where you can actually just work it through and make sure that at the end of the day, like, you know, you're happy and the client is happy. But sometimes you know, you're getting into much bigger problems, and this is not going to end well. And sometimes it's important to listen to your gut, because I've been in those situations where I was like, okay, I'll manage this, and you know, like, I'll make sure this is going to work, but it usually won't, and it's put you in a situation where you're actually getting into much more frustrating situations. And sometimes there is a way out of it. Sometimes ended up with some, I would say, fight. And you know, like, this is something which also you want to avoid, because you also have to look after yourself and make sure that at the end of the day you're not really getting or people not taking advantage of you, and they simply well, they don't know how to deal with those kind of projects. So you have to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Okay, so the next thing is, let's say you actually got the gig, and you signed a contract. They understand everything. They know what they're getting into. They understand the process. So the next step is the planning, the shoot. So it's also important to you know, have someone on say company side who can help you with setting everything up to make sure that the location is right, the employees are lined up. That always helps, and I always ask for someone who could kind of be in charge for those kind of I would say the entire process. Because if you, let's say, have 50 to 100 people and you know, there's nobody who's helping you out, and then you have to, let's say, go after this, you know, particular person, or this whole thing is unorganized, then, you know, like, from, let's say, 5-hour shoot, you're gonna be I don't know, ended up shooting for like 3-4 days. So you have to make sure that this plan is solid, works for you. You have enough time with each person, and also you have someone on their side, on the company side, who will be helping you out and make sure that everything kind of goes smooth and stuff like that. Also, what I always, whenever the negotiations are actually in the place, we talk about a makeup, we talk about a wardrobe. So you don't have situations that, you know, the client comes in and then he doesn't have a tie, or let's say the women, you know, oh my god, I forgot my makeup, I want to do it right now. They have to know exactly how this process look like, and they understand the wardrobe, they understand the makeup, they understand everything from your point of view and yours, and your photography kind of like a situation, that they have to come in to the shoot prepared, and they know exactly what they're getting into, and they understand the way they have to look like, and then about makeup and all this stuff. So it comes down to education, and then the companies, they have to understand the entire process. So before you even get into the shoot, I'm trying to meet with them and go through everything step by step, because that helps you, that speed up the process and save you a lot of time with this entire project. So it's extremely important to make sure that they understand everything. Okay, so let's say we've done the shoot, and then we're going through editing process. And usually with those companies, they have to pick about from 1 to 3 images maximum. Like, I don't give, like, say 10 images, or I don't do those kind of like deals where they can choose whatever they want and they can have 10 photos, and let's say giving them unedited images and stuff like that. Like, everything has to be clear, and you guys have to make sure that you explain to the client and explain to the company how this whole thing looks like. Because I had situations in the past where well, pretty much like, I was like, well, we will do the shoot and I'll give you whatever you want, and then I'll edit whatever you want and stuff like that. And yeah, I ended up like editing hundreds and hundreds of images because I didn't specify exactly what they want, and they started kind of blaming me for not explaining them, and basically well, I was just trying to be polite and then pay for my own mistake to basically misinformation and trying to be nice. Like, when it comes to those big companies, like, I'm not saying you're not supposed to be nice, but you have to make sure that everything is put in a place and put on a table, and everyone understands what they're getting and how much they're paying, and the timing and everything. Everything has to be, I would say, specified to the smallest detail, because then that's gonna save your butt from the situations where like, you have to, let's say, edit 10 images per person because you didn't tell them that they're not allowed to. So just make sure that at the end of the day, you have everything, I would say, put in the contract, and then to do the, as I said, smallest details, so everyone understands their part. Okay, so speaking, I was mentioned that a few seconds ago about a contract. It's extremely important, and this is something which sometimes a lot of photographers forget. They do everything by email, and it sometimes is tricky because sometimes people don't read emails. They read the things what they want to read, and it's might put you in some very difficult situations. So make sure you have solid contract with all the details. The both parties sign the contracts before you even start shooting, so you know exactly what you have to do, what your responsibilities are, and how many images they're gonna get, and all the additional details which well, gonna make your work with this company much easier. Okay, and the last thing what I want to talk about it, and this is, I would say, one of the most important parts, is like how to deal with money, because this is something which I always have problems with. I have a lot of issues with that, and I'm trying to learn and just don't make those mistakes. But sometimes it's I would say it's a little bit of my fault. Even I learned some of those things, but I want to kind of share this because I'm trying to kind of improve myself. So whenever you have deal with big company, always take deposits, because if you don't get deposit, they can always kind of back up at you, and they say like, well, like, I don't like the photos, or they can come up with any BS excuse to not paying you. I actually was in those situations a couple times. Everything ended up well, but I always trying to get, and now it's more that there's no way I'm gonna even blow out my camera if I don't have a deposit in my hands, so I can actually just cover my hard costs for the shoot, because there's a lot of planning going into it, and there's some additional costs and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you are covered. And the same when it comes to the final payments. You can release stuff very low resolution with your logos on, but you don't release anything till everything is cleared out. You get the check, or you get the money transfer, you get whatever, and then you actually release the images and they pay you whatever. Sometimes they're gonna tell you like, well, you know, we wanted the photos, but you know, like we can't pay you for the next 3 months. No, so you will get the photos in 3 months. Just make sure you don't get, I would say, in those kind of situations, and then you have to go after your money. I've been there, and it's weird because it's I would say like really bizarre. You have to ask for your own money, and you have to, I'm not saying begging them, but sometimes what happens is like you just calling them and like, well, is my check ready, or when are you guys gonna transfer the money? And you know, when they have everything in their hands, you are at their mercy to pay you. And those big companies, sometimes, you know, they have lawyers, they have like huge infrastructures which can kind of like fight you back, and you know, you don't have time and you don't have money to fighting with them. So I'm just talking about the worst case scenarios, and hopefully none of you guys will get into that, but just be I would say precautious about those kind of situations, because when you get into this, and then let's say you have a huge project where you put, let's say, I don't know, 40 hours, and then you have to beg them to get paid. That's kind of really, I would say, shitty situation, and you know, like you're gonna just pulling your hair out, and there's not much what you can do about it. Okay, so I hope I covered most of those stuff. I would definitely like to hear your opinion if you guys have anything else in addition to this topic. I know there is so much other stuff which I could talk about, but I try to cover one of the most important parts when it comes to the corporate headshots with big company. So I hope that was interesting. I'll be looking forward to your feedback, and stay tuned, and I'll chat with you guys fairly soon.